G'day everyone, Nelson Granger here for those of you who don't know me. I'm the owner of Mcfry, and today I'm going to take you on a walkthrough video of the car just to show all the work that's gone into it over the years. And also, for those of you who don't know, I'm also the owner of Billet Automotive Buttons. That's why I've got the stickers down the doors. So yeah, I'm going to take you on a full walkthrough video of the car. Underneath, everything lifted up in the hoist, and just show all the work that's gone into the car to get it where it is today. So the car is a 1976 HJ Kingswood, and it's just done up as a Monaro GDS replica. So it's a fake, but it still presents very nice. This rear quarter panel used to be nice and straight, but a year ago when I hit the wall on the other side at Power Cruise, it actually pushed the whole arse of the car across a little bit, just enough to put a ripple in this quarter panel. So it's something that I probably won't fix. Not gonna lie, but maybe if the paint gets a bit worse off, I'll probably fix it down the track. And this side here, when I hit the wall, it pretty much went all down the side of the car, so I had to replace this whole rear quarter panel, had to cut it off, and I just did a weld join down through here. The boot floor is still a bit wavy, you can see a crease right in there, so it's not perfect anymore, but still drives straight, and that's all that matters. This door actually only just got a scratch on it from the wall, so I just touched it up. And I had to respray this door because it got hit at the front pretty bad. Also the guard was actually that bad, I had to cut the flutes out and weld it in another guard. But they turned out really nice. Parachute. 45 litre fuel cell, 2 15-pound nitrous bottles with blankets or heaters. And I've also got a little tiny lithium battery, only weighs 3.5 kilos. It's another thing to try to get weight out of the car. This window net, this is just something for racing. You have the option of having this or having arm restraints. I just chose the net because it's just a lot easier, so you can still move around in the car freely. And this joins up at the top. Got 2 Kirky racing seats. Dash, I just got a GDS steering wheel. Got a GDS steering wheel, just like an Alternator dash setup, and just with a heap of buttons down the bottom. So the interior of the car is like factory GDS sort of trim, and roll cage from HBR cages. Heath did the cage. It's a full bolt-in removable, because the car's still technically a street car. So I went in with a bolt-in removable cage so I can just take it out. And the wheels, got 17 by 4.5 World Racing Magnum 1-piece wheels at the front, and 6-piston wheeled brakes with high carbon rotors. I originally had the 4-piston dust boot calipers fitted brakes, and I did a Queensland Power Cruise, and after the weekend the dust boots were melted to the pistons, and I had a lot of brake fade issues, and they pretty much destroyed the brakes, so they just cannot handle track conditions. So I contacted Willwood, and they pointed me in this direction of these high carbon rotors, and upgrading the brake size, so I went to the slightly bigger. Originally I had the small brakes that fitted in 14-inch wheels, so I upgraded to the slightly bigger rotor size and the 6-piston caliper, and also bought some race pads so the brakes work really well, because originally the brakes were just dog shit and they never worked well, so I had to buy race pads. Made the biggest difference I found with the Wilwood brakes. And yeah, the rotors, these rotors are done a couple power cruises now, and crack wise they've only got like minor heat cracks in them, so they're holding up really well. And up the back, got 15 by 10, 5-inch backspace, Wild Racing double B-lock wheels, and fitted with a 275/60 Pro tyre from Mickey Thompson, which is the tyre that everyone runs, all the fast cars. And they seem to be the stickiest tyre I've had on the back of the car, so they work really well. And I've made the parachute removable, like a little tow bar setup, which I'll show you when I get the car up. But that's just for when I'm planning on doing drag challenge in the car, hopefully next month, if the borders open up. So I just made it so I can put a tow bar in and tow a box trailer, and then just take the hitch out and slot the parachute in, and away you go. So I've got a little water tank down here. It holds 6 litres of water. It's just pumped into the heater circuit of the motor. I got one going to the back section of the head there, and that's just for burnouts. Like I can drive off the burnout pad and temperature's still like 190, 200 Fahrenheit. It's really good. It just puts that extra bit of water in the system so it just doesn't overheat. I've got the trans cooler at the front here. Here I have a Crankcase vacuum pump, a Moroso one. It's designed to create vacuum inside the engine to help with ring seal. So the intention of the thing is to make, usually generates an extra 20 horsepower or so, and it just helps with not blowing seals out in the engine. So that's pretty much how the motor breathes, just that one -12 line to the pump. And then I've now ran this hose over this 3.5 litre Raceworks catch can. Back to the motor. We just have a Chinese radiator, just one of the cheap ones off eBay. It was $180 delivered. I just found that it works really good, so that's all I ran with the car. I did run an expensive one on the car, but because it was thicker, I ran into fitment issues, so I couldn't put bigger fans on it. And I think that's what the problem was with my overheating I used to have with this car. So I've just fitted a standard size sort of aluminium radiator to get some bigger fans in there, which are the Spal shroud fans, the twin shroud fans, and they just work incredible. So the car just does not get hot anymore, which is really good. An electric water pump, power steering. We've got an Asr power steering pump here. This is factory power steering box. I've also got a brake vacuum pump under here, one of the CVI ones, and a vacuum tank for the booster, which I've got jammed down behind the guard. You can't see it. So just to keep the brakes working good at all times. And a clear view filter. These things are amazing. If you ever have any worries, you can always just put a air compressor on here and then check the screen, and if there's, if you have a damaged motor or bearing or something, it's going to show up in here, so you can know straight away rather than keep driving and just potentially fuck everything. One thing I forgot to mention back in the engine bay was oil accumulator, because this thing's actually saved my motor. At Summernuts last year on the burnout pad, I had the oil pickup snap off the oil pump, So that snapped off, and the oil pressure was just ended up going right down to 5 psi. So pretty much the only oil pressure the motor was having was literally just coming from the accumulator. So if it wasn't for that, I would have had to do a full tear down of the motor after doing that burnout. And all I did is I just took the motor out, took the sump off, and fitted a Morozzo billet pump rather than the Mellings Select pump I had on it. So, and a little more details on the motor. So it's 580 cubic inches. It's currently got a 400 to 450 horsepower shot of nitrous. It's got 2,000 CFM Pro Systems carburetors. It's for E85. And I run the nitrous and everything off the E85. So the motor's 13:1 compression, maybe a little bit more, I think it was from memory. And it runs just pump from United Servo down the road at our local servos at East Maitland. I just run United E85. I always test it just to make sure, but it's always testing around 90%. I run 400 shot of nitrous with the motor, and yeah, it runs great. So it's on the dyno, the car made 1150 horsepower with this tune-up, and it was a very safe tune-up. So it's something where I can go to power cruise and I can happily just spray it and, you know, not worry about running too lean or anything. So I haven't really done any fine tuning with the nitrous because the track haven't been able to get to the track because they just redid the dragway. But when I get back to the track, I'm going to do some fine tuning with the nitrous and see how much I can push out of it. I'd like to try and, I know the car can do a low 8, I just got to try and get it there. So yeah, Texas Racing intake manifold. It's got AFR 357 CNC heads, and yeah, 580 cubic inches. So it's 4.5 inch stroke. It's a tall deck, big block. Cam, it's a solid roller cam. It's got 800 lift, which is, it's kind of up there, but it's like a reliable sort of lift. Seems to be very reliable with this setup. So in the past I've had dramas with lifters breaking, so I've gone to a Morel Bush lifter with this motor, and it seems to be working really good. And I've also, all the engine work that gets done, I get it done by Brad Mcfry, which is one of my friends. He's got a orange Trana, so he races and he just knows a lot about big blocks. So I just get Brad to do all the engine work because I know a bit about motors, but you know, there's certain things where I know that I'd stuff something up and it's too much money to have something stuff up. So I get all my engine work done by Brad, and also the gearbox. The gearbox, I get all my work done by Norm from Victory Performance Transmissions. I get Norm to do the gearbox in the car. So yeah, the two sort of areas I'm rather try and not dive too deep into. The engines, I do a bit of work to the motor, but yeah, when it comes to bearing clearances, all the little technical things, I just get someone that knows what they're doing. The ignition setup is just the MSD, got a digital 7 box inside that just controls the ignition of the car, and just run a crank trigger off at the front there just to make it accurate timing. So that's pretty much a good rundown of the motor in the car. So with the nitrous, I had originally when I got the tune up, I was running a race fuel. First time I put the nitrous on this motor, and had Simon Krieger tune it on a hub dyno, made 1136 horsepower, at the wheels on a 350 shot. That was running race gas back then, and the E85 with the same nitrous shot actually made the same power as the race fuel. It's probably, obviously the race fuel is going to be, you know, more safer for a bigger hit, but yeah, I'm currently running a 42 jet in the fogger at the moment and haven't had any dramas, but the timing, have pulled the timing back to 11 on the motor, so there's probably plenty of room there to try and do some fine tuning, but that'll just be at the track. So the Nitrous Controller, I just run it in my glove box, pull it out. Edelbrock progressive controller. This thing has been great. Originally I had issues where the nitrous kept cutting on and off on me, and I found out it was just because I had, under here, I had my the ignition wires were running next to the solenoid wires for the nitrous, and that was just enough to stuff with the solenoids, so the progressive controller had come on and it just kept shutting on and off, and I didn't know what was wrong, but I thought the box was broken and all this other stuff, and in the end it was just the ignition wires and the RFI interference. It was just interfering with the progressive controller, so I fixed that up, moved the wires away, and I've never had an issue since. And you can do a dual ramp setup with the Edelbrock controller as well, so it's actually a really neat controller. Just do a little rundown on the cage I missed before. It's just bolted down in the corners there, bolted at the back. We've got the parachute. That's the parachute lever there. You pull that down, it just pulls the cord. It just pulls on this wire here, just pulls that out, and then the parachute pops out. So that's it. The car currently weighs, race weight of the car should be around 3,700 pounds now. I haven't weighed it properly yet, but I put fiberglass bumpers, boot and bonnet on. I got all that from street class fiberglass, and I've got that on, all painted, so it's taken a bit of weight out of the car. Also bought a little 3.5 kilo lithium battery, which seems to be working really good. It starts the car and everything, so it's running really well. So the race weight, yeah, around 3,700 pounds. Hoping next time I take it to the track, it's going to do a low 8. The best 60 foot I've done in the car is a 124, or was a 124 or 126, 60 foot. And the best quarter mile is an 880, but I had a lot of traction issues. I finally managed to get the power down at Kenda, the last Kenda event at the start, early this year, and it did a 536 down the 1/8 mile, which calculates to a low 8. So I know the car's got the low 8 in it. I've just got to get it back to the track, which is alright. So I just lifted the car up on the hoist, and we'll have a look underneath. I'm going to use a torch so you can actually see everything. The brakes from the back. I've also modified the suspension on this car recently to try and get more lock to help make it funner for drifting and stuff. And what I did is I fitted LX Tirana steering arms, where the tie rod actually goes on the top rather than the bottom compared to the factory arms. And I had to fit some bump stops, which are these, just a bit of 5mm flat bar there, and yeah, they're the bump stops for those. And now the steering actually just has a little bit more lock, but I did have to remove the front sway bar to make it work. Not with these tyres, just with the other tyres I got over there. These are the ones that, these handle really good, these tyres. So they're 17x8, just like the GDS looking wheels, the Sprint ones they're called. So back under here, we have AFCO double adjustable shocks fitted, just the factory springs. The springs I got in there at King Springs. They come with a little plate that you weld in at the bottom. So you weld that plate in, and then you just got to get a die grinder and die grind a fair bit out of there. Then the shock just goes in. And there's the section I modified at the back of the control arm, because the wheels actually turn that far with the smaller arms. I had to take a notch out of there. They miss everywhere else. They seem to just hit the sway bar, and that was it. So they work good. I haven't I've only tested them on like a burnout pad and just driven on the road with them, but I haven't done like a proper test yet at like Power Cruise, but I'll be looking forward to it. Under here, just got an ATI balancer with a mandrel. I'm running a tooth belt for the alternator now because I've had so many issues with alternator belts flying off. Also running a billet CVR alternator because I ended up cracking my previous one, and it'd just be from the RPM. Been spinning the motor revs to 8,000 RPM. That's where I've got the rev limiter at, and I think I'm kind of pushing it a bit there, so I'm definitely not going to go any further with it. So the sump, this is an Asr sump, which is, you can see, very close. Had to notch a little bit out of the cross member to fit this sump in, but just went as big as I could. It's very tight everywhere. There's just like a couple mil gap there, so everything just works. And I've also got, that's for the remote oil filter, just got a little plate up there running 2-12 lines to the clear view up the front. So also running, we got like I'm not running engine plates or anything at the motor, just running like a tough mount setup from the rod shop, just running those mounts, and they've seemed to work fine, so never worried about going with an engine plate or anything. So the alternator, it's a 200 amp alternator, 55 GPH Mazir water pump. And this line here, this is just to get a bit of extra oil back from the heads down to the sump. I don't know if you're going to be able to see, but that just goes into the side of the pan, and there's two ports at the front of the heads to help with oil drain back to the sump. And the pipes are just made from bends, and I made them on the floor, so it was very painful making these, but they've held up really well. I did them with a MIG welder and actually ground the welds off, which you're not meant to do. And I did have one pipe crack on me, which is where I welded. So with the pipes, only one weld I had crack, and they've been fine since. So they're 2¼ inch primaries, and they go into a 4-inch collector, which I've then got going, reducing to 3½ inch. And I've also got an X pipe, so it comes down here into an X pipe, into some cutouts, which I've set up as side pipes. So these are electric cutouts where they got the butterflies. So I got them set up on a push button, so you push the button and you can open up these side pipes and the car goes loud. And then as we go further back, we've got 2 mufflers, and they're actually quite quiet mufflers over the diff, and reason we're going over the diff is I just found it easier and it worked, so I just went over the diff rather than going under. I did have to modify the boot floor back here. As you can see with the coilovers, this doesn't really give you much room to run any pipes, so I had to notch a section out of the boot floor to get the pipes over. But I had no issue doing that. So they actually reduced, these are 3-inch boxes too, so they reduced the 3-inch there, come over the diff, into some resonators, and the tailpipes are 4-inch, just welded onto the resonators to give it that nice big look. I'll start at the tow bar now. All I've done here is just welded it there, welded it there, and I've got 2 bolts at the top, up there, which I hold it to the beaver panel. It's only to tow a box trailer, so I didn't want to go overboard with it. For burnouts, I've just got these, I think it's 3mm flat bar. It just runs down. I've got it bolted down there, under there, and I've got this little bar running across to the chassis just to like help cut the rubber off, because what was happening was pushing the floor up here when you blow tyres out. Very hard on the car, burnouts, but they help a lot. That's the sort of scratches I get after a burnout competition, so they work really well. I've also mini tubbed the car. You're not really going to be able to see much, but I've probably taken about 1 inch, maybe a little bit more out of the rail, just to get these tyres underneath the car fitting a bit better. And the wheels, as you can see, I can barely see here, these brakes are the low profile series Wilwood brakes, which they designed. They're meant to fit inside a 14-inch wheel, because when you get double bead locks, there's not much room for calipers, as you can see. So this is probably the only size brake setup that is fit with these double bead locks, unless they make, or probably they would make some race brakes for them, but I just went with a street setup because, yeah. So the brakes are there, running McDonald Brothers adjustable arms on the top and the bottom, just to help with adjusting pinion angle and getting the diff set up right. It's all very tight under here. I've also got an anti-roll bar mounted. It's pretty dodgy up there, but I've got it welded to the chassis up there. You can just see anti-roll bar just to stiffen up the back of the car, and the coilovers have like a separate bit of chromoly tubing welded to the chassis, which just mount at the top there and then come down. I've lowered these. I originally set the brackets up wrong the first time. I had shorter coilovers and I found they were the wrong size, so I ended up getting these longer AFCO coilovers. I think they got 5-inch of travel, just to help get the power down in drag racing. So I've had to chop the hell out of the brackets, and they look pretty fugly now, but I've just made them work. I think ideally I'd probably wouldn't mind getting another diff for this car, but while it's working I keep going with it. So I don't have any back bracing on the diff or anything. And this, I made a mistake, see, because I did this diff would have been like 3 years ago now. I made a mistake when I was welding the upper arms on. I welded this one shorter and it was too far forward, so I had to redo it. It looks funky, but it hasn't broke, so. These are just original sway bar mounts, because originally I had just this factory sway bar on it. And the diff, it's a 35 spline Moser axles. It's got a full spool in it now and running 325 gears. Not running the pro gear sets, just running the street gear sets, the 28 spline yoke. And I've got a strange pro iron center covered in rubber. And chromoly tail shaft, 3.5 inch. And the gearbox is a Crankcase Turbo 400. I got this so I didn't have to run a blanket for drag racing, because as some would know, when you want to drag race, you've got to have either a flex plate shield and a blanket over the box, or a shield over the box, or you can get an SFI rated bell housing and case, and you don't need to have either of those. So I just went and got an SFI case, SFI bell housing, reed box. It's a pretty expensive outlay to get, but if you're intending on drag racing, you may as well just do it right the first time rather than going back and forth, because you end up spending more money then. And the valve body in this box has engine braking in second and third gear, just to help with sideways action and stuff like that for power cruise. Originally I had no engine braking, but I just found it hard to try and control the wheel speed of the car, doing burnouts and drifting and that sort of stuff. So I put engine braking back in the box, and yeah, still got a trans brake. It works well. I've got a nitrous converter in it at the moment. It stalls around 4,000 RPM, so it's kind of made the car a bit of a nugget. Naturally aspirated now, but the old converter used to stall at 6,000, and the car did a 9.4 NA with the old converter, and I had 3.5 diff gears in the back then. And now with a nitrous converter, I think NA would probably do like a 980 or something like that, just because it's not putting in its power range. Got a Castlemaine rod shop, gearbox, cross member, and yeah, I've got my line lock here. This is a Willwood line lock to shut the rear brakes off for burnouts. It's been working really good. Had a lot of issues with the brake taps and all sorts of things where they just lock the rear brakes on, but this Willwood electric line lock is working really well for shutting the rear brakes off. And back here I've got the 2 fuel pumps. Pretty ugly setup, but that's what happens when you start changing things on your build. Everything just gets messy and ugly pretty quickly. So I've just got the big Magnafuel 500 pump there, and just the Holy Black fuel pump for just running the nitrous. Just so when I turn the nitrous on, it's got its own separate fuel pump. Still running out of the same tank, but I just set it up like that as I was a bit worried about the ProStar pump not having enough to support the big nitrous shot with the E85. But that being said, I've never tried it, so it might have worked, but just to be on the safe side, I went with another fuel pump. So that's it for underneath the car. Go from the parachute, the exhaust, all the way down. Hope you guys enjoy the video. I'm starting a new build on a HZ Ute. As of next week, I'm going to go pick it up and turn this around. I've already got the motor here waiting. It's going to be a serious build. It's going to be 565 cubic inches. It's going to have a blower. It's going to have a big carbon injector hat. I'm going to run on methanol. And I'm going to build it as an all-rounder sort of car. like Mcfry's been built. Not going to be registered, of course, but yeah, it's going to still be a pretty tough car. So I'm going to start that build soon, and yeah, just keep an eye out. And that's it. I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching.